YouTube. Let's make sure everything's kind of up, and I also need to pop out the chat. So anybody who's here early, bear with me. I'm just kind of getting things settled. There we go. Looks like everybody's muted. Okay. All right. So I think we're live on both. One of my windows is not muted. There. All right. If that didn't handle it, I don't know what will. Just had to deal with an echo tonight. All right. So we're back. Kinda. Sorta. I think we're live. If we're not, we'll just talk to dead air for a little while, and then we'll all go home. I'm professional. You better get knocked down a peg by disrespect. You about to be disrespected, son. That's going to be a wild time. All right. So, it has been a minute. We thought we would try to kick off a stream and have a conversation before everybody gets, like punch drunk off turkey and watches football and then goes into a coma for a couple of days. Because, it's... Yeah, that's... I'm not saying any of this like it's a bad thing. This is just tradition. This is what you do. So we thought we would get together and kind of talk about now... The original thought behind this topic, and it's been a while since I wrote this one down, was to kind of redefine kind of what retro is today, because we've kind of moved the needle quite a bit forward over the last couple of years as far as retro gaming. Now, a lot of the old hats like me and probably Mike will probably look at it more as something along the lines of, NES, Genesis, Saturn, that kind of stuff. We generally kind of stop the needle somewhere around, I'd say, N64 era, right? So PlayStation 1, Saturn, that kind of stuff. However, there's been a long enough time, you could technically start to consider some of what we would call newer consoles, aka Xbox 360, PlayStation 2, kind of, sort of PlayStation 3. I think Dreamcast kind of fits in there at this point. I think you kind of have to, right? Like, at this point, I kind of feel like you have to. The problem I have too is like, how do you define retro now, right? Because a lot of the stuff was digital only. It's got downloadable content. It almost won't function without the stores and things like that being connected anymore. So how do you even start to do those? You know what I mean? Right. I'm talking about a lot of the stuff that came out on like the arcade. It's kind of like the Wii Store, right? You could buy it, you could download it, but it never had any kind of physical release. It's almost impossible to get off of the console. So kind of where do you even... Oh, okay, you can't hear Mike. Apparently they can't hear. Apparently they can't hear you. So huh. I can hear you, but they can't hear you. Yeah, I'm thinking. What happened here? Hold on. Try now?
I didn't look.
There we go.
Yeah, I didn't look to see if.
Okay, there we go. I bet you they can hear you now.
Aha.
Can you guys hear it now? I think the feed got changed over to something else.
Gotcha. So they didn't hear anything.
Good to see you, man.
All right, hang on. Let me pop the chat out too.
Okay.
I always forget to pop the YouTube chat out.
Okay. He can hear you now. All right. Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I had it on voice meter aux that was on here, and I thought I had changed it over to Vio, and I hadn't. It's a whole banana thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
So there's a lot of stuff that only came out digitally, didn't move stores.
Well, on the 360
that's
store,
kind of technically
anyway.
retro, but you can't even get your hands on it, right?
That's true.
All this kind of comes down to preservation. Which ones we consider retro? Which ones can you get your hands on? Do you even consider the digitally only ones even anything at this point? Because you can't do anything with them unless you buy. It's kind of like what was that game that got released that was going to be like a Silent Hill thing that got dropped on the PS3?
Yeah. Crap, I know what you're talking about. The play that it came out on PS4.
Yeah, it was like a demo, and then people were selling the entire console, right?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And then it disappeared, and that was it.
Yeah. So what do you do with those games as they start to move more towards the retro space, right? Like, what do you do with some of these things? There were all kinds of Xbox Live arcade exclusives, Wii Store exclusives, and stuff like that. You know, is anyone going to carry those forward? Because you can't even exchange a physical copy of any of those, right? They just only exist in the space that they exist. Now, the nice thing is kind of moving forward, a lot of this stuff is starting to hit marketplaces like Steam. So at least PC, which has had a much better track record of keeping legacy content working, will likely have this stuff more so in the future. Because I'm seeing less store exclusives, right? Like I haven't seen anything in the last couple of generations like the Wii Store or the Xbox Live Arcade where you had exclusive games that just hit there.
And I'm trying to think what. No, you're right. I mean, Xbox Live Arcade was kind of the last thing I remember that. Well, okay, so no. So if we were, there are, like Steam, of course. And
yeah, but most of the stuff on Steam, on that indie store, pop up on most of the other marketplaces at some point, unless they just can't afford to get it out there, right?
True. And I guess that's the same of the games that are in the indie part of Antstream. Because there are some indie games like Tapeworm and Flea and stuff.
Yeah, but those, at least, I know Flea hit, I'm pretty sure that hit Steam. That's been out on Evercade. So that's actually had a physical release. Because it not only did they make physical cards for it, for the NES that you could buy.
Right.
A lot of those also popped up on Evercade collections and like one of the indie collections, right? So that's another way of getting.
But the NES is inarguably retro.
Yes, absolutely. Almost anything that does physical medium and comes with everything contained on it, I would absolutely consider retro. And anything that came before online, anything that came before the big online push. So that covers Xbox and below, right?
Yeah.
Well, Dreamcast to an extent, but Dreamcast didn't have a whole lot of patches on the games. So mostly what you got is what you got.
In fact, they didn't have any because there was no hard drive. You bought the game and that was it.
Right. The Xbox technically could do that, but for the most part, they didn't do a lot of patching. That I don't remember popping up until right around the 360.
Towards the end, they did because remember, the Xbox has a hard drive on it. Mm-hmm. The Xbox was. See, I think where the cutoff that I use is more generational based because Xbox really did. I mean, while the 360 was the beginnings of kind of the always online play,
yes,
the original Xbox was kind of the pioneer of having a built-in broadband adapter to try, to be an online system. The Dreamcast had a broadband adapter, but it was more geared towards, 56K modems. But both of those systems I consider retro because, well, for the Dreamcast, I mean, it's been 24 years really since
Right.
maybe 23. I guess 2001, 2002. It's been 22, 23 years since that system's been out. There hasn't been another Sega system since. There has been other Xboxes, of course, but we're so far gone from the OG Xbox that, I consider that retro, 100%. And in that generation, I consider the Xbox, the PlayStation 2, and the GameCube all retro.
Yeah, I would too, and I think that might be the end of retro. And the reason I say that is because I think the reason I say that is because of the way the consoles started going. The amount of DLC needed, the online connections required, etc., makes a lot of the library, if not most of the library of a lot of those games, consoles like the Wii U, the Wii, and the Switch being exceptions, almost unplayable.
With the exception of the 360, I do think the 360 and PlayStation 3 are perfectly playable with the discs. I mean,
some of them are, some of them aren't.
But remember,
it depends on the game.
Well, anything that came out, any major game that came out had to come out on disc, because if you remember with the Xbox 360, there were two SKUs. There was the regular 360, and then there was the core, which didn't have the hard drive.
Yeah.
So
that I thought was an incredibly stupid move. It was one of the better marketing things that they had done, is just including a hard drive as a base unit. And then when they tried to make a more affordable SKU by making the hard drive detachable, and that you didn't have to have it, I thought that was a huge mistake. Because then developers couldn't rely on it in every situation, so they couldn't utilize it like the original Halo utilized it on the OG Xbox. So you couldn't spin things out and cash things out to it to ease those transitions from area to area and make it feel more seamless. You couldn't do that on the 360 because you couldn't count on it being there.
Correct.
So I thought that personally was a huge mistake.
Yeah, and a lot of us in the media at the time agreed with that. We thought that didn't make, and it confused the consumer public. Now, they got away with it. The 360 was an enormous success.
It was probably the most successful console they ever made.
And mostly what happened was nobody bought the core.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure a few people did who really needed it at the $200 price point, but it was like $100 more to get it with a hard drive.
Yeah, but it was so minuscule. I'm almost positive when they made the Slim, the hard drive was kind of built into it.
I think once they started doing the Elites, it was.
No, the Elite didn't have a core, but you could detach the hard drive. Because I have an Elite.
I need to go look at mine. I've got a couple of those sitting around the house, and I don't remember. I don't even look at the hard drive because I consider the hard drive kind of an essential function of the console.
Yeah. It also was the great place where we could store our custom soundtracks.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's up, Scrambles? Good to see you, man.
Scrambles, which by the way was also born on the OG Xbox, was custom soundtracks.
Yes, because I remember you could do that. God, couldn't you do that with Crazy Taxi and a couple other games? Like they let you rip things, put them on hard drive, and then you could just play them in the game.
I thought that you could.
Was it that with or Tony Hawk? Or I'm trying to remember. There were a couple of games that had those options. I thought.
Crazy Taxi 3 may have. Burnout definitely did.
Okay. I never messed with Burnout. I did mess with, well, I'm sorry, I said Crazy Taxi, but I don't think Crazy Taxi was on Xbox. It was Dreamcast.
Crazy Taxi 3 High Rollers was.
Okay. I never played any of them past the first one. Like, I played the first one, enjoyed it, and then I kind of tapped out on the whole thing.
Two was really good. Two introduced multi people.
Multiple stops that you could do.
Yes, where you pick up 3 people and drop them off in 3 different places. Crazy Taxi 3 High Roller really was kind of just an extension of 2 with a bunch of different, with actually a bunch of different city track. I mean, there were different places to drive.
Right.
But for the experience, the original is always kind of the classic. They're trying to. That's one, and it's kind of when we talk about retro and what it means in today's world. Sega is attempting to resurrect a lot of those IPs for modern audience.
I think that's great. The only thing they're pissing me off with right now is Virtua Fighter 5 because they're re-releasing it again on another re-release on another upscale version of the same game that they've released like 8 times over the last 10 years.
Right. It's like stop
just
messing
hit number
with
6,
us.
guys. It's
Thank
okay.
You. Stop messing with us. Stop messing with us and make 6.
I mean, I might still buy 5 when it hits on Steam because I have a friend that will probably play it. And if that becomes a thing and you want in on that, I could probably get you in on it with him because we've been doing all sorts of games like that all off stream.
Okay.
And I know you're big into Virtual Fighter. My
to the
annoyance
extent
is reselling me that same freaking game.
To the extent that I still very much play Virtua Fighter 2 on the Saturn.
Okay.
And if anybody's ever seen my Saturn videos that I put up, and I can't remember, I don't think I brought any over to Rumble. I think they're all on the YouTube channel. And I'm thinking of re-releasing that one with new commentary. The Saturn version of Virtua Fighter 2 ran better than it had any right to. That sucker runs at 60 frames per second with almost
the Saturn
1 for
was
1.
Not a weak console. It was actually a pretty decently put together piece of kit. Its biggest faults were marketing, release.
Oh, the split VDUs. The split graphics chips.
Yeah, and the graphics chip because they kind of ad hoc threw in a 3D chip last minute because everything started changing around them as they were building it up for the new arcade board.
Yep.
So,
and Namco hit everybody by surprise with Ridge Racer, and they weren't prepared for it. So what they did was, Yu Suzuki, when he created that game, created his own graphics library for Virtua Fighter 2, and he actually meshed all the characters were all 3D polygon, and they were wonderful. He took the second chip and he did all the backgrounds in 2D. And if you look close enough, sure, you could tell that they're 2D and the arcade's 3D. But no one's paying attention to the backgrounds while they're fighting. And the game looks phenomenal. And what he was able to pull off to run that game the way it runs, and with the entire arcade move sets and all the characters and all that, is a modern miracle. And so the point is I still to this day play Virtua. In fact, I play Virtua Fighter 2.
Went down on the Dreamcast. I thought it
looked
Soul Edge in the arcade.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I still play Virtua Fighter 2 more than I play Virtua Fighter 3 Team Battle on the Dreamcast, which arguably is a better looking and more arcade looking game in the 3D space. But there's just something about VF2.
Yeah, we got a couple comments here. Scramble said my friend had a Dreamcast, but he only really played fighting games on, at least when I was around. And honestly, that was a great console for fighting games. Fighting game players were spoiled rotten with the Dreamcast. There was a ridiculous amount of good brawling games and fighting games on the console.
Oh gosh, yes. My goodness.
Yeah, Scrambles was like, it was a smart way to optimize graphics. Showed. Thank you for popping in. Sai says the Saturn's biggest problem was its translucency. It can do just fine, but a lot of the games use that mesh to their transparency. If not for that, it would have had a lot better reputation. Honestly, Sai, its reputation was more due to how they kind of shadow dropped it and all that other goofiness that they did with it, more than the console itself. And also in a lot of areas,
that E3 shadow drop, that E3 shadow drop killed them.
Yeah, it was also hard to find because so many people dropped it. Like I know in my area, it wasn't easy to find one of them, man. You had to go You
I
had to
know they're
drive
not
like
around.
an hour and a half, and go to the small boutique stores that dealt with just video games in order to find it. You weren't
I know they're
finding it
not
in
around
most of
now.
the big box stores. They wouldn't carry
Well,
it.
Walmart carried it, but nobody really. I mean, Walmart wasn't what it is today, and even though they're not around now, KB Toy and Hobby not selling it was
Yeah.
huge. 'Cause
Well, I think
every
KB had been
mall,
recently bought by Toys R Us around that time, hadn't he?
I so, after that, I mean, because they sold the Dreamcast KB Toys,
Yeah.
but every freaking mall had a KB Toy and Hobby. Every
Yes.
mall,
Yes.
and so them not selling it and
What's up,
refusing.
Omega? I
Omega,
never see
Jesus,
you on
Michael
the
Bubble. All
Monday
right,
on the every other Monday
there
stream,
you go.
dude.
This is free.
It
This
is
is for
dope
you,
to see you in
Omega.
chat.
There you go. This is for you, buddy. This is for you, brother. Actually, that is funny because I'm still a little pumped. I went to the gym before the show, so we had
but the Saturn did so well in Japan. It actually really did.
and
I know you say that slightly sarcastically, but it did do quite well in Japan.
It not only did it last, it lasted much longer. It had more games. There were games that were in Japan that were better than their U.S. counterparts. I know that there's a running
What's
joke
up,
about
Manny? Good to see you, man. Thanks for popping
Hey,
in,
Manny.
man.
I know there's a running joke about Street Fighter the movie, but the Japanese import version of Street Fighter 2 the movie was actually a quality Saturn game. The U.S. version, not so much, but
game
the
just looks
Japanese
so bad.
version was.
I get what they were trying to do with it, and they basically felt like they were trying to capitalize on the popularity of the early 3D fighters that were coming out there. Not Virtual Fighter, but more stuff like War Gods and MK4 and all that kind of stuff, right? That was starting to come out. Trying to hit in on that 3D space around the same time. Because it was definitely like digitized versions of the characters more on a 2D plane.
Oh, yeah.
But
And it
trying
looked
to
like
look 3D at the same time, it was kind of weird.
Well, and they looked good. Like, first off, there were only a couple of characters that you really knew. But Guile looked...
the Saturn had like 1,200 games in Japan.
Guile looked like... They did. They had a ton of Japanese games. Guile looked like Jean-Claude Van Damme in the game. I mean, it was that good.
I mean, they basically did the same kind of like rasterization digital graphics that they did for like Mortal Kombat 3 and a couple others. They used the same technique. It was just more advanced than like say Pit Fighter was, because Pit Fighter is another early example of that kind of graphical style, right? It just looks janky as hell when you compare it to like later games, because memory space and what you could do with cameras and digitization around then. They could do a lot more with it around the time those came out.
The arcade version was great. I mean, the arcade version played perfectly fine. Capcom did a really good job on the arcade version. It was trying to bring that home where the arcade board was much more powerful than the home consoles.
Yeah. Manny, for me, like if you're talking like all time, it'd probably be a toss-up between Street Fighter 3 and MVC 2.
And I was always a Mortal Kombat guy. I was always an MK guy.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love the MKs. I even like the 3D MKs. And I know a lot of people don't like those, but I thought a lot of those were good.
The more modern ones, I'm not a huge fan of, but the early
honestly,
ones.
I enjoyed 10 quite a lot. 11 took me some getting used to because it was really slow. MK1, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it. It plays really well, but it's also kind of painful to play because of the way you have to do some of the inputs. I find it like kind of very difficult to do a lot of what you need to do the appropriate way to do some of the better techniques. So I don't know. I probably just need to get more back into it because I've been doing a lot of Street Fighter and Tekken and Killer Instinct that all use quarter circle motions, and MK doesn't do those, and so it feels kind of painful when you're trying to, especially when you're trying to mentally rewrap your brain around it.
Since we're talking about fighting games in retro, there are two games that I feel.
Dude.
There are two games that I feel that are underrated in that space. One is Eternal Champions on the Genesis and the Sega CD.
We're going completely off topic again, by the way, guys.
No, we're
RetroRoots if you're new.
Yeah, no, but I'm trying to get us back there as we're talking about. So Watch me tie this together, Nick. Watch me like a Boy Scout.
Whee!
Like a Boy Scout, I'm about to tie this together. Like a Boy Scout.
Magic.
All right. Yes, right. Jazz hands. Okay. Two underrated games, retro fighting games, were Eternal Champions, which I actually played in my last retro.
I never
Monday
got
Night
too
Retro.
deep into that one. It always looked like a cool concept, but I never. That and Time Killers was another one I never really dove too deep into.
Yeah. The other one is an OG Xbox game called Kakaku Chojun. And I've played that 2 or 3 times on Monday Night Retro.
Oh, I think
It's
I saw
a
you play that one. That's the one that had the. It looked like a lot of the same stereotypes you'd see in Tekken.
you see in Tekken,
Yeah,
correct? But it was an absolutely solid fighter that just doesn't get a lot of attention because it didn't have a big name around it. It was published by
yeah.
Microsoft. It was, it wasn't a big developer like a Capcom or a Warner Brothers, but I love that game. So I am not my favorite Mortal Kombat
Omega.
games.
I've got the Sega CD Eternal Champions despite not having a Sega CD.
I hear you. I've got it too, and I love it. But those games, and the reason that I enjoy the original 3 trilogy of Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3, 3 Ultimate, which I have on the Saturn, more than I like the moderns, is because when they were, I feel like as modern gaming continues to move forward,
Well, that's a
they're
Hasselhoff.
trying to do so much to make these different games for a new audience that, to me, they lose what those games were about, right? And while Eternal Champions wasn't as good as Street Fighter, it still captured what Street Fighter 2 and those 2D fighters, before Capcom tried to make these 2.5D and 3D whatnot. It just captured what made those games fun for me.
Right.
And that's what I'm having such a hard time with a good amount of modern gaming right now, with some exceptions. As you know, I'm
I
enjoying.
feel like there's a lot of modern games that fit that, but you do have a solid point that a lot of what's happened now is either, and I'm going to use accessibility kind of loosely here because accessibility for video games is a good thing, right? Let's just put that out there. People with any kind of handicaps, eye, physical capabilities, or just struggling to get into games in general. So having that kind of flexibility of allowing more people to experience these and to start to get into to see if it's something they want to get more hardcore about, I think is a good thing. But sometimes too much, or catering too much to specific crowds, like we've talked about the diversity in gaming and things like that, right? A
Right.
lot of times that can get pushed a little too far to where you're excluding the original base in favor of this new base. Veilguard's kind of an example of that, right? A more recent modern example of that, right? Where it kind of pushed this agenda of what they really wanted to do, and now the initial reviews, which were all positive, was going, well, maybe it wasn't this. So I'm like, okay, so realistically, you either finally got deeper into the game, or you got past the initial, this is a very diverse game or whatever, and now you're realizing that the core meat of the game isn't living up to everything else that they tried to shoehorn into the game. So it's
Well,
lacking either depth, clean controls, or the focus was more on messaging rather than the coherent story or gameplay that you were going for, whichever it was, right? Um,
well, how many games have we looked at that we go back and play? How many Okay, one of the streams that I do every Thursday night, as you know, is that Stream Arcade stream, right?
right.
The Thursday night the arcade. How many times have I gone into a game and I've literally said, "Man, you couldn't make this game today," because there's some element in the game that, whether it's a female character, whether it is the masculine macho, he Hulk guy.
See, that's still fine. It's the female characters that are not okay anymore. And Manny,
Well,
can you clarify what you mean by this with the RE series falling under that?
well, the original
In
Resident
what
Evil
context of what
versus
we've been
these new.
talking about? Can you clarify that a little bit for me? Because I'd like to answer it, but I'm a little lost in chat here a little bit too.
I think I know what he's talking
Do you?
about.
Okay.
The original Resident Evil games were literal horror games, right? They were supposed to jump scare the
Oh yeah,
crap
and then
out
they
of you.
started making them more actiony.
More action zombie games that
Yeah, I
don't
guess I could
scare
see that.
you.
I thought seven and I thought seven was actually a pretty good throwback to that original though, because wasn't it more focused around horror and less around action?
I don't
I'm not a big
remember.
RE guy, so I over my head a lot of times.
Well, happy Thanksgiving, brother Hoff.
Have a great Thanksgiving, Hazel. Thank you for popping in, man.
Yeah, I miss you, man.
About the way it doesn't cater to the original fan base. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think
Right.
Mike picked up on what you were putting down before I did. Yes. I think in some ways, yes. I think you could easily say that. But
And
again,
I
somebody else who's more into RE would probably have to answer that because I'm. I saw it kind of go all sorts of loosey goosey like around 4, and then 5 was pretty much just a straight up action game with zombies.
right,
Um,
and that's where you lose. That's where you lose the people that tied into your game, right? And that's where you know. All right, I'm even gonna take Call of Duty and watch how I tie this together. The modern day Call of Duty games, right? I don't
Second up
play
the disrespect.
every Friday. Hey Doc, every Friday night, man. On the one time. Um, the this is the first Call of Duty game multiplayer that I have played in honest to goodness, almost 2 decades. I have avoided Call of Duty like the plague. When I remember what Call of Duty started as and what it built itself on was back on the original Xbox, the original Xbox and the PC as a World War II, somewhat kind of realistic, um, you know, battle, single player, just immersive experience, right?
I
And
would
as
argue
I've
if you
gone through
wanted a more immersive experience with that, you went with Medal of Honor, but that's just
Medal
me.
of Honor was so, yep, no, absolutely. Medal of Honor, and not just that, Brothers in Arms, there were games. My point is that my Call of Duty, my perfect Call of Duty goes back to those days. This one I'm playing because when I'm
God
playing with
is not
friends, it is
wavy.
kind of fun. It's not wavy. But I'm enjoying this one, right? I'm enjoying this one. And I'm actually looking forward to getting into the story on this one because of the era. I mean, it's Desert Storm and the Iraq War and all that stuff. Like, I was in my 20s and was very interested in that whole time period, right? So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that story. But my real love of that series came at the time of Medal of Honor, the original Battlefields,
Yeah.
those games, and now what they've done with them, which is why I haven't played it for 20 years, is they've made it into this crazy online. In fact, they've taken what most of us loved about the single player and almost destroyed it.
Well, the
And
single
that's
player in the last one that I bought, they didn't even have the campaign fully ready when it launched.
right.
You had one
Because they don't.
mission, and then a couple months later, you got another mission. I think finally the campaign's complete, but you had to download that separately. It wasn't on the disc. So they got like one mission of the single
Right.
player ready, and then they launched the game because they know their player base. They know most of the people that buy this game buy it for the multiplayer. They don't buy it for the story.
And that's the other thing that draws me back to retro more than anything. The idea that when you play these games, you are playing a finished game. And if it sucked, it sucked. You couldn't do anything about it. Game didn't sell. You went back to the drawing board and either made a different game or you went out of business.
Well, part of that mentality too is most of those games were made for a single player experience first. If there was a multiplayer experience, it was built as an addendum to give you more gameplay, right?
Yep.
It wasn't the primary focus. Even Doom, that had multiplayer kind of baked into it from the beginning, didn't focus on that as part of the main drive of the game. Nope. Because not as many people had online. Not as many people were requiring an online component. So
and for us who were playing online, it wasn't that we were playing online. We were taking our rigs to people's houses and playing LAN. We didn't play online in those days. Doom 1, Doom 2, Duke Nukem. We didn't play those online. I actually didn't play Duke Nukem. I actually didn't play the first time, believe it or not, I played Duke Nukem online against somebody else was on my Saturn with the Netlink. That was it. Otherwise, I was
mustard on a burger.
There you go. Mustard, and I do mustard ketchup.
Yeah, mustard ketchup.
No, but that was my first online experience with Duke. Otherwise, I was playing that LAN party on my PC with people, in the same room. That's how we did that.
Yeah, I remember lugging my computer to do stuff like Warcraft 3. Because we got an early cracked demo or something like that of Warcraft 3 before it launched, and messed with that at a LAN party one time. That and StarCraft and other things like that. Spelled mustache. But yeah, the LAN parties, I miss the vibe, but I don't miss lugging the gear.
Yeah, yeah. That's how I feel.
It's too much work, man. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, those are things. I will say that the advent of online play has helped some of the retro in some of these remakes and some of these collections that have come out. Now, a couple that come to mind are like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Cowabunga collection, right?
Yeah.
I was able to play Hyperstone Heist, which was a Genesis game, with Fastback over the internet.
Yeah. And you can do that with a lot of the retro pie style stuff, like retro arcade stuff.
And the Sega stuff, like the Sega stuff that you could buy on Xbox, were all Xbox Live compatible. So I could play Streets of Rage 1, 2, and 3 with people. That is a nice mashup.
You can do a lot of that on Switch too.
Right.
My understanding is the connectivity is not always that great, but it is capable of doing that. So it's kind of like being able to do local co-op. What you would normally need to do local co-op for, you can now do online, which is a nice augmentation to the existing retro space, right?
Yes. And that's the one thing, but it still goes back to playing those games. Going back to the Sega thing for a second. With Sega's
Hold on, I gotta read this. My first and last LAN party ever I went to, I was playing Serious Sam. My computer was acting up, so I shut down and reset it. Turns out my computer was the one on the right, not the left.
Oh,
oops. Oops.
That's when you sneak out before that guy realizes what you have done to his machine. And you just go, "Hey guys, my mom called and I gotta go." Why is my machine off? I don't know. Fire it up.
I don't know, man. I got nothing.
I think it turned off when I unplugged mine. And you run as fast as you can. Holy crap! That. Well, okay, hold on. Omega, when you say reset it, do you mean what we think you mean?
He hard reset
You didn't just reboot it and,
Oh, no, I guarantee you he hard reset that thing, man. He probably shut it all the way down and brought it back up.
Woof.
Or he hard shut it down and went, "Oh, shit, not my computer."
Well, no, because hard shutting it down, you can fire it back up. If you reset it like I think you reset it,
Oh no, I don't think
Where
he
are
did.
all
I don't
my
think he did
hey?
like. I don't think
Where
he did like a formatcy or anything like that. No.
where are all my icons? Oh my god! I got enough beer whiskey to potentially.
I'm kidding. YouTube's on fire tonight, guys.
Oh my goodness!
Uh,
Nobody's on. Well, yeah. Who's talking on? Nobody's talking on Rumble.
there's
We're
nobody
all on.
talking on Rumble right now. We had about anywhere between like 4 and 6 people hanging out. But nobody's really felt like chatting on Rumble. Everybody's hanging out on YouTube, which is
Yeah,
fine. I'm okay with it.
tonight's the
People are hanging out
YouTube
and having
night.
a ton. That's all I care about.
Well, yeah. Well, it's but those experiences. So getting back to the new Sega stuff. Um, uh, hey, you're
Mandy
lucky
said
I'm
it, not
chatting
me.
on. You're
Didn't make
lucky
it
I'm
out true,
chatting
but
on
I didn't say it.
YouTube. You're lucky I chat on YouTube. I hate YouTube. Um, the new stuff that Sega's trying to do. Some of those games tug at my nostalgia. Some of them I looked at and I'm like, please don't do this. Like Golden Axe, which looks like it's now an over the shoulder,
You know, if they
third
were to do
person.
just if they did even a cartoon stylized like Streets of Rage 4 version of Golden Axe, I would be stoked.
Yes.
I
But
don't
like,
think it needs to be. I don't think you need to go back to. Uh, God, what was the? They had one that they did that quite that way. It was kind of like a 3D style beat 'em up, but it focused on Tyresa Flair,
yes,
and I think it was called Beastmaster or something like that. And that
something
one
like that.
did not go over well at all. So
And the other
I don't know how I feel about that particular avenue for it. It's not a franchise that's ever. I mean, if you want to do it like in a big arena and have it more DMC style, maybe that'd work.
no, I again I the other one that's given me a little pause is Crazy Taxi, because we were talking about how great Crazy Taxi was the original, and I do think 2 and 3 are great games. What they're trying to
I think
do
three's a little
now,
weak, but it's still pretty good.
I think three on the Xbox was like I said, it was an extension of 2, where
Oh, I'm sorry.
they added new
I
maps.
was still thinking Golden Axe. I think you're talking Crazy Taxi again, right?
I am talking Crazy Taxi because
Okay.
what I was saying
Okay.
was
Sorry. I
because
was
what I was
reading
saying was
Manny's thing, so I missed your leading part. My bad.
got it. So Crazy Taxi, kind of great closed, kind of you know closed circuit kind of game, right? You had finite places to go. The one that they're trying to build now is they're trying to build an open world Crazy Taxi. I don't want
I mean, are
that.
you going to do like an always online thing where there's other people there and you're competing for fares or something? Like, what are they doing with it?
I don't know because they haven't really fleshed out what the feature set is yet. They've just kind of given us teasers, but those are things that I'm not necessarily looking forward to. Now, on the other end of that, um, the new Shinobi game, that looks
I mean, Manny, if I had to eat
incredible.
15 tacos or die, I'd probably eat the 15 tacos. I'd hate myself later, but I'd probably eat the
Yeah,
15 tacos.
I would eat 15 tacos. Yeah.
Sorry.
So I'm
Sorry, random questions are random. I'm just trying to
yeah.
answer as they come in. But I
Those are
mean,
the hard hitting questions.
an example of that, if you want to modernize it, and you want to make it more open world. Say you make it closer to like a GTA map, but it's for like for cab fares and stuff, right? And
Right.
there's rival cab services or something like that. Maybe there's an online where you have different factions of cab services servicing the city, and you're kind of competing. I could see that kind of working and being pretty fun, depending on how they do it, right? Um, but it kind of depends on how they execute it. If you're just going to do this big open world and it's not going to be filled with much of anything except for the same stuff you were doing in the tighter space, I don't know that that really services the theme of the game any better.
Exactly. And those are the things that I'm more concerned about is how is that going to work? And it also goes back to, let's take Sonic for example. I know Born's in the chat, so I take shit for Sonic CD, but I'll play Sonic.
As
I'll
you
play
should.
those older Sonics. Still the best Sonic game out there. I'll play that over Frontiers, which I still haven't played yet.
Frontiers is not bad. I mean, for a first attempt at trying to understand how to bring Sonic into an open world, it's not bad. It's rough around the edges. I still 100%ed it, but it's definitely rough around the edges.
I know you did. But if you look at what they're trying to do now, right? And I think one of the best homages to that series was Sonic Mania. That came out.
Sonic Generations wasn't bad either, and now they've got
I've heard Generations, and I hear Superstars is solid.
Yeah, I heard. Was it Superstars or All Stars?
Superstars. That's the newest one.
Okay. I've got a couple of those, but I haven't dove too deep into them. I need to go back. I need to pull those up and start playing through those.
Yeah, I would like to play Superstars. I would like to play. I've heard the other one I've heard.
Sonic Rush had some good stuff, though, Scrambles. Like, Sonic Rush, honestly, was, at the time, that was probably one of the best newer Sonic games that was out there, quite frankly. That and Generations. Generations on the DS was pretty phenomenal. I really enjoyed it. Most people preferred Rush, though.
But again, and I know you 100'd Frontiers, but for me, that 2D style was what I enjoyed most about it. And even with Sonic CD, with its large, I think the biggest complaint that people had about Sonic CD was the levels were so big, and a lot of that reason for them being so big was because you had the past, future.
I don't have the hair to be Fabio, so am I DiCaprio?
Yeah, I could be Fabio. It's okay.
I see. That's interesting. What was it? Sonic Knights, I think it was. That was the one on the Wii where you turned into the werewolf. Most people did not fall in love with that game, so that's actually kind of a unique take.
I don't remember that one at all.
I never tried it. It got pretty deadpanned, and I'd had some bad experiences, I think, with Sonic games around that time, and so I just skipped it.
Right.
Sonic Team is known for being very, very sketchy.
They are now, yes. But it's not Yuji Naka.
Right up through the Dreamcast, they were rock solid, and then they kind of went loopy when they went.
Well, because Yuji Naka left. Once Yuji Naka left Sonic Team, they were never the same.
Zombie says, retro gaming is a way for us to reconnect to what made us happy and allows newer generations to experience it for the first time, which is absolutely true.
Yeah, but the thing that draws me to it is what I see in modern gaming that pisses me off so much. The SAS games are. The SAS games are, we talked about before.
Hey, man.
Hey, what's up, PJ? Remember Fabio got hit by a
seagull riding a roller coaster? Good times.
This is why you don't ride roller coasters,
That's
PJ?
Right. It was Sonic Unleashed. That's right, Zombie. That was it. Sonic Unleashed.
Got it. Okay, now I remember. That one I do remember. We had a
Mike,
discussion.
Did you hit arms, legs, back, chest? Because he got the Hooters next to the gym today.
Apparently you hit chest and legs, sir. Actually, yes. Today was full body. Today was chest, back, shoulders, arms, legs. We had a discussion once with Panda Sub. And we were talking about what was really ruining modern gaming. And my answer to that was the SaaS games were really, in my opinion, ruining modern gaming. There are some that hit really well, Fortnite being one of them. But for the most part, SaaS games come with this stigma that they've earned that the game is going to start with nothing. And a big one that comes to mind is Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves is 100 times the game that it was when it launched.
Yeah, but it started out super bare bones.
Exactly.
No Man's Sky was the same way. It launched with like basically nothing that they mentioned. And to their credit, they've spent literally like 12 years charging nobody for DLC fixing it.
Yep.
Which is madness, in my opinion. People are almost begging them to start taking money at this point. They're like, it's okay. We believe you're sorry. Please take some money.
But we didn't have that back then. And I think one of the things that one of the experiences that I came across, there's a couple games that for those who don't know me, like Manny and Ty Lord and guys like that who haven't seen me,
I'm sure they've seen you here and there.
I don't think Manny has. Maybe. Every other Monday when I'm not here, I'm doing a Monday Night Retro stream on my channel. And a couple of times I've ended up starting a game and playing it through. One was the original Prince of Persia. When I say the original, I am talking about the original. Now, I played it on Sega CD, although I had it on PC. I actually had it on my Atari ST originally, way back in the day. Okay, all right, fair enough.
Manny likes to lurk a lot in channels. He'll pop in. He talks to Delete more than he talks in a lot of the channels, but he likes to watch streams, not necessarily interact. That's just his jam.
All right. Well, if he watches Deletes, and he's been over on Rumble, he maybe seen mine. I don't know. But if I had no interest in this latest Prince of Persia.
Honestly, I kind of wanted to pick that one out because it looked closer to, like its more original series while going a little bit Metroidvania, which I thought was okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Other nights, Mike's on
OnlyFans.
Oh,
like
man.
You beefcake, you.
Thank you, man. He says, I support the boys. But I ended up playing that entire game that night instead of flopping around. Because usually what I'll do is if I'm playing Sega CD, I'll show a bunch of games.
Yes.
I honed in on that, right? The other one, and I know you sat in on you watched a bunch of those streams hanging out in the chat, was Dragon's Lair 3D.
Mm-hmm.
I got sucked into it. And it reminds me...
That's an easy to miss title on the OG Xbox.
It is.
Honestly, because nobody was really looking for it when it dropped. And I think even I saw it and I thought, oh, it's another re-release of the one that I've seen 8 million times. I don't need this. Not realizing it was a brand new version of the game, like fully 3D.
Which was an enjoyable experience. There were a couple of...
Everybody, thanks for popping in, man.
All right, Brother Omega. There were a couple of places that gave me heartburn, of course, but on the whole, that game was I was just entranced in it. I wanted to keep playing it.
Yeah. There's
only a few games that have come out in these generations where I have had that feeling.
How much of that do you think is just finding the game approachable as we've gotten older and have more responsibilities?
That's part of the allure of the retro.
The games themselves, right?
Because
a lot of the earlier games, when you start looking at the 8-bit games, like you're playing it and you might spend 40 hours on it, sure. But you know that game is a 20-minute to an hour to 2-hour game from start to finish. You know that when you start playing it. It's just a matter of not sucking at it enough to pull it off, right? And even on the long side on a lot of those games, And I'll put beat 'em ups in there as an example. Most of those, especially some of the modern ones, like I just bought the GI Joe Wrath of Cobra one not that long ago. In less than 4 hours, I was able to finish the game, right? And it was easy to get sucked into it and kind of drive through it because it was easy to pick up and kind of understand what you needed to do. The mechanic, there was enough there that you felt like you had enough to kind of chew on, but not too much to chew on. And you knew it was a smaller bite-sized experience. It wasn't something that was going to require like 100 hours to start to get into the game kind of thing.
And that's absolutely part of it. That there are, I mean, it's not a one, for me, it's not a one size fits all of why retro means so much to me in today's gaming, right? What you just said is a huge part of it, right? The approachability, the controls. Think about where we've come from in controllers, right? The NES had a D-pad and 2 buttons.
Yes.
The Sega Genesis had a D-pad and 3 buttons, and eventually had a D-pad and 6 buttons. The Super NES had a D-pad and 6 buttons in a different layout, right? It wasn't until
No, man, I think you're talking above my head. Is it possible to play PvP Strike Eagle for SN?
PvP Strike Eagle.
What's Strike Eagle?
I'm
drawing a blank on this one. This is a game I don't know.
This must be
Strike Eagle, you mean?
I wonder if it's is it a game from 2023?
I think he might be talking about F-15 Strike Eagle. That was a MicroPros game.
Well, there was a couple of them. There was wasn't there an EA? Oh, that was F-17. Oh no, I'm sorry. EA's game was F-22 Interceptor.
Yeah.
F-15 Strike Eagle was, yeah, and there was Falcon.
I don't know if you could still do that on these or not. I mean, it came out on some more modern platforms, so maybe somebody has that working. But I don't know. To be quite honest.
By the way, shout out to MicroPros.
Hi, by the way. Yeah. Oh, Galaxy popped in. I didn't even see him pop into my chat.
Hey, Galaxy.
Hey, Galaxy. Yeah. Sorry, man. I would have pulled you up. I got chat scrolling so fast on the other side. I missed people coming in. I was trying to look things up. Oh, there it is.
Hey, Galaxy. Great stream earlier, man.
Did I miss Galaxy streaming? Damn it.
Yeah, he was streaming earlier.
I think I was probably playing with my buddy Aaron. We set aside some time to play some fighting games tonight together.
So shout out to MicroPros though, just real quick. One of the few, Maryland has some legit and has had some legit video game developers, like obviously Bethesda.
This is a Sega slandering zone. You're safe to slander Sega. Yes, go ahead.
No, get out of here, back. Get out of here. But they're and some of the older and they are some of the older retro. MicroPros was wonderful, and in fact, MicroPros was about 20 minutes from my house, so I used to go out there and talk with those guys a lot. Firaxis, which is very near where I live, which now is owned by 2K, but that was Sid Meier's original studio. And Sid Meier's a friend of my guitar player in my band, so he's come out and seen us play a couple of times.
Nice.
And there were other places. One of my friends who goes to my synagogue had a development studio called Big Huge Games, and they put out they put out stuff for EA all the time. Now they do mobile, but and they're still alive. Actually, they're still out. He's still out in Timonium, my buddy. But now they're doing mobile. But they were big for for a long time. So those are, yeah, nostalgia is a hell of a drug, right? And the approachability, which you're talking about, is something that plays a big part. Um,
Now, let's
not
be fair with games like what No Man Clutter's talking about, like something like F-15 Strike Eagle and stuff like that would be on the PC. Accessibility is a vague term there, right? Because those are PC games were kind of a different animal. Now that one actually got translated to a couple other things like the NES and the Game Boy and the Game Gear. It looks like, from what I can tell, that way later. Um, and I, honestly, Coulter, I can't answer your question. I'm not familiar enough with this game to know the idiosyncrasies of it, quite frankly, to be able to answer a lot of the more detailed questions of what you're throwing up there. So I can't answer those. I apologize. I would know this game under vague details, and I don't think I was playing things like Strike Eagle around the time that this would have come out, especially not originally, because that would
I
have
don't know
been
if Strike Eagle.
1984 for the 8-bit version, from what I'm seeing in Wikipedia.
Yes.
85 for the
So
Apple II, 87 for the Amstrad. Um,
so so F-15 Strike Eagle, no. Fast forward Spectrum Holobyte, fast forward to Falcon. Falcon 3.0, Falcon 2.0, 3.0. Those were multiplayer. So those were games you could certainly do. Um, and I Falcon 3.0 was I had that, and I remember that the manual for it was this thick for that game,
I can believe it.
because it was one of the first real combat flight sims, and it was insane. It
Yeah,
was like
there's a lot
it
of controls to like any of the flight simulator style of games if they're done properly. Because that's meant to
this
be
was
more of a simulation. It's not meant to be arcadey, so the immersion is part of it.
oh, it was pulled in. I mean, a lot of guys that worked on military simulators worked on that game.
Yeah, I can believe that. Galaxy's going to be doing Final Fantasy 14 with Aegis and some of the others. See, I dipped out of doing that, one because I was trying to do the story with a buddy of mine, and two, it felt like we were struggling to just find something to do with the group we had, so I just seemed like a good fit. At least not for a stream, not for me anyway.
Yeah, I'm not into Final Fantasy 14. I tried that whole thing
14's a
where
lot of fun. It's a good game.
I, I
You tried it on Xbox and had issues.
well, the issue is you have to buy a subscription, and then you have to buy something else in order to just play with your friends. Unless you somehow in other parts of the world like ran to the middle and met up. And it just there was no I don't know. There's some anyway.
MMOs
Um
don't seem necessarily like your thing, though.
they used to be. Dude, dude, let's go back to retro. Do you know how much time I pumped into EverQuest Online Adventures on the PS2? A ton. Phantasy Star Online on the Dreamcast was I put well, and that's not really an MMO. So Phantasy Star Online was more of a kind of a Monster Hunter style game. Um,
Which one were you talking about?
Phantasy Star Online.
Oh, that was more of a
It
Monster
wasn't.
Hunter
It
style
wasn't a.
game?
It was a. Yeah, more than it was an MMO, because you were more. Uh, you. It wasn't like a. It wasn't like an EverQuest kind of game, right? You went out on adventures, yes, but then you came up against monsters, and then you all beat the monster down. Um, it feels like what Monster Hunter looks like today, and maybe I'm a little off on that. Maybe Monster Hunter isn't quite the game I'm thinking. I mean, I'm just thinking of it in what you do when you're out there, um, taking on beasts and stuff. But those are games that I pumped a ton of time into, and I just like the new one, Fantasy Star 2.0, New Genesis. I've played it once or twice. and it just doesn't capture that feeling that I used to have. And so some of that is the reason that for me, again, going back to, kind of the main part of the topic, when I'm playing Antstream, when I'm playing the OG Xbox, when I'm playing Saturn stuff, when I'm playing the Wave Simulator, when I'm
My mic died? I don't think so. Shouldn't have. Can you hear me,
you
Mike?
can hear. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
When I'm playing those older games, there are very few things today that I can relate that to. There are obviously exceptions. I'm thoroughly enjoying Astrobot, right?
Yeah.
But those games are few and far between. Oh yeah, now you're muted.
Now it's acting weird.
Oh yeah, something is going on with your mic now.
Yeah, let me check.
Now I hear it. I didn't know OG Mike was chill like that. I'm an old soul, man. I'm over 50. And Manny, while he's fixing his mic, I own all the modern consoles, right? My main gaming rig is a Xbox Series X. Like I have a Saturn, a Dreamcast, an OG Xbox, and I've actually soft modded.
Okay, there we go.
There you are.
All right.
I've actually
I must have
soft modded
tilted it just enough to where it wasn't picking me up for whatever reason. No idea.
Well, it sounded like it was crackling too, almost like there was a bad connection.
I did reseat the connection.
That would do it. Oh, thank you. But I soft modded my Xbox, my OG Xbox, so that I could load up. I've got a ton of Sega CDs over there, but I don't have a Sega CD player because they're hard to come by. The lasers don't work well, so I emulate those. My 32X game, same thing. I have those games, and I play those games, and and then every Thursday I play Antstream Arcade, which is a big harken back to old arcade, old NES, Genesis, old computer stuff, right? The stuff that like Digital Eclipse puts out with like the Atari 50th collection.
Right.
Those are the experiences that I gravitate more towards. To give you an idea, I have an Xbox Series X. I have a PlayStation 5. Other than Astrobot, I haven't played God of War Ragnarok.
So let's try to pin this down. What do you think about it is on the newer experiences? It's just not pulling you in. Is it time?
Time
is it story? Is it the
story is a big thing.
What feels like a little bit of agenda pushing? What is it?
I think a lot of it has to do with the repetition factor of these giant open world games, right? So again, take a game like God of War Ragnarok, which I haven't played. I played the original God of War, the 2016 version.
Oh, Ragnarok is built in a very similar manner, as my understanding.
Yeah, but I have noticed I have not played it. I haven't played the new Horizon Forbidden West. I haven't played, like Astrobot's a different game, right? Astrobot is more along the lines of what an older style game used to be like.
Astrobot's very much a throwback to just a level-focused game.
Exactly. A level-focused, linear style. Yes, there's a little bit of exploration to go find the hidden stuff, but it is point A to point B. Right?
EverQuest Online Adventures, I don't know about that, but EverQuest itself was absolutely an MMO.
EverQuest Online Adventures is 1,000% an MMO. 1,000%. In fact, that had a subscription like an MMO. No, that was PSO is not an MSO. Phantasy Star Online I don't consider an MMO. The only piece of that feels MMO-ish is that there's a lot of players online and you can meet up with players. But then again, Destiny is not an MMO, but you could do kind of the same thing in the Citadel. EverQuest Online Adventures is basically the console version of EverQuest. Is an absolutely an MMO. 1,000% because you had guilds. You and 20 people could go off on an adventure. It is much an MMO as a modern day MMO right now would be Elder Scrolls Online. EverQuest Online Adventures is very much like Elder Scrolls Online, but back on the PS2. And yeah. I punched hundreds of hours into EverQuest Online Adventures. Hundreds.
And I think Zombie brings up another point that kind of lines up with you. Games nowadays are more of an investment. Not to say that they aren't good, but it requires dedication to play through them rather than learn.
Yes.
Like even some of the RPGs that I had the most fun with personally, stuff like Mass Effect, are usually somewhere between like 30 and 45 hours, which is pretty manageable. And most RPGs now are 80 at best, as far as how few hours to really get like a decent amount of the experience. And more of the open world games are going that way too. Particularly now, that's determining whether or not you want to try to 100% them, right? Because if you're going to 100% some of these, your time goes from, you could say 30, 40 hours for general completion. To get the most out of it and to do most of the stuff that's in it, you're looking at like 150. On an average game like Starfield, I'd argue is probably somewhere around 120 hours if you wanted to do most everything. You could do the base game in probably 30.
And I don't have time for that. To your other question, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
And Zombie's absolutely right. These games, and it's not to say that retro games aren't an investment, but retro games have a different. It's almost like retro games have a different. They have a different purpose. You go back and play a lot of old Super Nintendo, Genesis, TurboGrafx games. They all have, they all do definitely are finite. Most of them are platformers that are point A to point B platformers. Even the games like Doom and Quake were still find the exit, get out, shoot everything that moves, right? And what I have appreciated about the newer Doom games, Doom 2014 or whatever whatever year that came out, Doom Eternal. Hey JDA, yeah, that blast processing thingy. Yeah. Even Doom Eternal, and what looks like the new Doom game. Shout out to id Software for sticking to the script. Doom Eternal was bigger, but it was point A to point B.
I thought Doom Eternal lost me a little bit. It's still a very good game, don't get me wrong. But they added so many layers of complexity to it. I thought they were pushing it a little bit too far with how frantic everything is.
I could understand it. I could see that. I think adding the traversal threw a few people.
Well, because that and needing to focus in on certain things to destroy those, to augment like enemy capabilities, and then the more limited ammo, which meant you were constantly swapping between like blowtorching, chainsawing, and I forget the other mechanic to basically, try to keep everything capped off. It was just a lot of logistics work to handle in the middle of a firefight on top of the traversal, which is why I thought it just kind of became like too much micromanagement.
Yeah,
for the flow of the game. It worked. I got through it, but
no, that's fair. It's that thing you played Tom and Jerry on. Yes. Dude, I watched that for a while. I that's another thing. Okay.
I miss that one. A lot of those animated games. Okay. The cartoon games on the Genesis were nothing to sneeze at. They looked great. Some of them were hellish, but they were good to look at.
That Galaxy brought that up, because that is another thing about retro gaming that you do not see in these modern times. Disney does not do this anymore. Disney does not have Castle of Illusion, Mickey Mania, which I know
there's been a couple of Mickey games that were low-key released on the Switch that were actually pretty solid.
Well, Epic Mickey was an attempt. Epic Mickey was an attempt to get back to it.
No, there's been a couple past Epic Mickey, and Epic Mickey's getting a re-release on the Switch too.
Is
and
it?
I think Steam and other platforms. Zombie says, do you think modern gaming feels more like a job now since we're adults, or is it still the same, just with more requirements and investment?
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like well, no, I'll give you another one. Doom was, and I'm talking original Doom. Doom was very straightforward. You pointed at somebody, you shot them. They went, and then you were, and there was a thrill to pumping lead into an enemy and then moving on. Fast forward to this past Wednesday, I was watching Peter play Stalker 2. And Peter finally said to me today in Discord, dude, I can't recommend this game. This game sucks. Trying to do headshots, trying to do anything in this game is a chore, even using mouse and keyboard. It used to not be that way. And even when you get back to the older Star Wars games, right? Shadow of the Empire on the N64, which was a masterpiece of a game on the N64, which is definitely retro. You didn't have these issues that you have now. Stalker 2's been in development for God knows how long. Now, I will grant you, they're a Ukrainian developer in the middle of a war. Fine. But back in the day, you didn't spend so much time trying to beef up your graphics that you forgot about the gameplay. And Doom wasn't a looker. In fact, you know this.
Doom was at the time, honestly. It was a good looking game at the time.
I guess it depends on what resolution you ran it at. And you know this as well as anybody. The original Doom, much like the original Wolfenstein 3D, was very much it was so linear that they hadn't developed the technology yet to stack levels on top of each other. So if you ever look at a map in Doom, there are no rooms on top of rooms.
No.
No.
There's also no jump functionality in it. You just
There's no jump functionality. And in fact,
there was no free aim functionality.
There was no free aim. Correct. I don't think I have to go back and look and see if you can even jump in Doom 3, which
you can.
Maybe
Doom
you could.
3,
Can you in 3? Okay.
Yeah.
So Doom 1, Doom 2, you couldn't. Quake, you couldn't.
No. Jumping, I think, was first introduced, I want to say Dark Forces.
Could be.
Free aim was what came before System Shock? Drawing a blank.
System Shock was PlayStation.
No. There was a game before System Shock, like a precursor to System Shock.
That did what?
Dang, I did a video on it. I'm drawing a blank on it. There was one game that came out on like Apple first, and then I think it got ported to a couple other things. It was the first one to let you free aim, but before then you didn't even have any of those mechanics. And it's not. I think to his point though, pretty much. I think it's a mix, and the reason I say that is because when we're younger, we have more time to sit down and learn these things, right? Now we're working 40 hours a week or more. A lot of us have kids. You've got other like commitments with either friends or family or, kids, sporting events or whatnot to go to. And maybe if you're lucky, a lot of times you can carve out, I know some weeks I can carve out maybe 4 hours of time to game, right?
I try to carve out
sometimes
3 hours.
You tend to get a little bit more because you do it while you're streaming, right?
Well, right. And and there's a piece of that of why I stream. It helps me to play, right? It helps me to play. But I would
and JD8 also
say,
brings up a point. I love buying games to buy more stuff in and pay more to unlock stuff faster.
Stuff later. Yep, right.
Yeah. Because a lot of it is a monetization game now too, right? So
yep.
So part of it, like if I go back and I look at Street Fighter, like a lot of times I'll find myself not playing Street Fighter 6 or bidding it up to do ranked or anything like that. Not because the game's not fun, not because the matches aren't fun, but because it starts to kind of feel like work to keep up with the Joneses a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
It feels too much like doing the grind, and I don't necessarily want to do the grind. Now, sitting down and playing with a buddy of mine that's of similar skill level, that's not also going out and doing ranked for hours and hours and hours on end, that's just that much further before me, that when you're playing with people that are of like a similar skill level and you can kind of stay at that skill level, it doesn't feel as much like work and a grind, right? When you
Right.
have one person who's at like this skill level, you have one person who's doing ranked or whatnot, or they played a lot more than you do, you're either okay with just losing all the time, or you start feeling like you need to grind to kind of get up there, and that starts to feel more like another job, right? So I think a lot of these games start to feel like that, either with the online play to try to keep up skill level wise, or to try to get up to skill level wise, or just trying to get through a lot of the content that's in there to be able to get through it, because a lot of it doesn't feel necessary to the overarching story, right? Like most of Bethesda games, you could chuck 90% of that stuff out of the game and you'd still have the main story. 90% of the game has nothing to do with the story. Nothing. However, in Bethesda games, if you don't do that, you're missing the better part of the experience, right? Because a lot of the better stuff, like becoming Space Batman, isn't a requirement of the main story. It's just something you happened to run into while you were out there that was interesting and fun. And in a lot of ways,
Right.
better than the main story, right? And so I think there's a lot of FOMO and a lot of, and I kind of blame achievements for this too as well, because people like achievements. You know, like I gotten back into playing Vampire Survivor, and while that's fun, I find it fun for the fact that it always has a finite 20 to 30 minute end for the most part, unless you deliberately set it up to not do that. And then while there's a bunch of achievements you can go for, you can do those things in like sometimes like 5-10 minutes. You could do it in like a 30-minute run or whatnot. And then you've accomplished something, you've gotten your little ding for your achievement or whatnot, and you go about your day, right? But some of
Right.
these, like Monster Hunter, you could spend 100 hours on there and get one achievement in like 100 hours. And some of those are just ridiculous to do. And it feels like legitimate work to try to get some of those, right? And I feel like that's part of it. And it's probably a generational thing because of the way that we grew up. Like if you were to take a younger generational person and throw them in like Contra and go, sit down and focus on this and beat this, they would probably want to claw their eyes out. Like just the repetitive nature of it, the sheer grind of going through the stages again and again and again, dying in the same place again and again and again, until finally you get that breakthrough, and then here you are, right?
Right.
That's normal to me and you. That doesn't bother us. That would probably bother them, right? And it's the same way with us. It's kind of different, right? And see, zombie, that's kind of another thing. As you get older, you just have less time. And unless the game is built around you being able to play it for like 30 minutes to an hour and get something done or make some progress, then, and on top of that, you have to make sure that the console stays up to date. Because there were entire weeks where I would go, okay, I'm going to play a game today. I boot it up, and then the console would have an update for an hour. Well, that's my game time for the day. Then I come back and try it again in like a day or two, and now the game has an update that's going to take like an hour. And I'm like, well, shit. What am I doing with my shiny console other than updating it all the time so that I can get the opportunity to boot up my game?
And that's, I remember when we were going to play, and this has happened like 2 or 3 times. Peter and I will pick a game to play, right? Because we do our multiplayer stream together. And I will fire the system up, or he will fire the system up, and we'll go, hey guys, there's a Call of Duty is the worst one. Hey guys, there's a 128 gig update.
Yeah.
And so a quarter of our stream is me sitting there trying to download the damn patch, and I've got gig internet, and trying to make that work. So we're just sitting there. I'm like,
Yeah.
So again, retro gaming doesn't have that.
Right.
Um,
And on modern games,
uh,
you have to make that concession. Like, if you know you're going to play this on next day, you boot it up earlier, right? And try to make sure you get everything up to date.
right.
Now, if you happen to be playing on the day that drops and you're not home till 5 o'clock and your stream's at 6, that, that's your evening.
But going back to what Zombie said about also being a job. Games back then were also not as long. You said that yourself.
Correct.
And so even on a game that was an RPG, like a top-down RPG. So like the ones that I remember playing were like Buck Rogers on the Genesis, stuff like that. One of my favorites, and my friend Ed Annunziato brought this up on X. Games that would be great to remake. The Genesis had a fantastic RPG called Dungeons and Dragons: Warriors of the Eternal Sun. Another game that I
vaguely remember this one. I don't think I played through it. I was big into the Phantasy Star series, which I would like to see get an HD remaster.
Right, but even those games, you could punch 20, 30 hours into.
Oh, easily. Some of those could be up to like 60, depending on what it was.
Going to the Dreamcast
Zombie
era.
made a comment here. Pulls out rocking chair. In my day, Nintendo didn't need updating. We just put the tapes in and played.
That's right. My Nintendo. Right. How many times did our parents call all video consoles? Would be great to
see remastered.
Shining
absolutely.
Force would be good.
I'd love to see that third one get a release outside the Saturn.
I also, we go into say the
you have to blow
Sega
first,
CD. Go into the Sega CD Sega CD era, and we get Lunar. Yeah. Right, Lunar, the Silver Star story.
Yeah,
we go to
Rick
the Saturn.
Posted that up as one hands. The only problem I had with that game is I got stuck at the very, very end. I don't know if you remember this. There was one section where there was just felt like thousands of doors on one side of this thing or the other, and you had to figure out which freaking one to go into.
Yeah,
that was absolutely terrible.
Kick-ass soundtrack, though.
Oh, the rest of the game was phenomenal. It was beautiful, great soundtrack. Just stellar game up until that point. And that's where I tapped out because I'm like, what the hell? So the cartridge equal downloading update.
and if blowing on the cartridge didn't work, a cotton swab with alcohol.
Technically, you were supposed to use a cotton swab and alcohol. The blowing on the cartridge could corrode the connectors. We all did that method, but you weren't supposed to. The things you learn as you get older.
But you go to the Dreamcast and you had Grandia, Skies of Arcadia.
Those are both great games. Those are phenomenal games.
And I know Back from the Dead's up in the chat, and while he rails on my love of Sega, he wants a Skies of Arcadia remake as much as anybody.
Oh, that reminds me.
Because he's a hypocrite.
I'm
sorry, I didn't say it out loud.
Hold on. I'm going to
Star
look
Ocean
up here real quick because there was a game that came out that's very much in the vein of
Star Ocean.
Not Star Ocean. Skies of Arcadia.
Oh, really?
That is an indie game that's on Steam. So I need to find put it on my wish list. Go ahead while I'm looking that up. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just those are, but again, you get those games versus I was never into these newer Phantasy Star or Final Fantasy games, and I know a ton of people are. I'm just not.
I tried 12, and my understanding is 12. You had to go about 20 hours in before they actually took the kitty wheels off, and you actually had control of your character. Because until then, it just kind of played the game a lot for you, which I found very frustrating.
Right. Well, and so Zombie, there wasn't like you didn't grind in retro games like that.
Fantasy Star 2, you absolutely did grind. If you didn't, you got fucked up. You absolutely ground.
Well,
That was
so
a
okay, so what's your
it was a grindy game. I love it, but it's
what's
a
your
grindy
definition?
game.
All right, what's your definition of grind?
I mean, like I go from one town to the next town. I need weapon upgrades and levels because all the monsters are almost two-shotting me by the time I get there. So I need to run around the town to get money, to gain levels, so I can buy new equipment in that new town.
All right, fair enough.
That is grinding. That is a definition of grinding. That is old school grinding.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. When I think of it, I think side quests, things like that. But,
okay,
fair enough.
That's another definition of it. But I'm talking about the
what you're saying is totally
definition
fair.
of like level grinding and stuff.
Yeah, level grinding. No, you're absolutely.
And that was a requirement of those games. Like you get to the next town and there'd be a big sword upgrade or something like that you would need, or a piece of armor. And you wanted that before you wanted to be as well equipped as you could before you went to the next dungeon or town or whatever. Because the longer you waited on that, the more you were just going to start getting one shot. Right?
Right.
And the name of the game is Sky Ocean Wings for Hire. Apparently it's got mixed reviews out, which sucks. But it looked great. Now, apparently it needs patches. But it looks very much in the vein of Skies of Arcadia if you're curious about anything in that vein.
Sorry. Still getting over a little cold.
Yeah, JDA Delay went through that whole Skies of Arcadia thing. Yeah, RPGs are super time consuming, man. Like the last one that I really bought that I was going through was like that Chrono Trigger styled one. And I kind of got tired of the combat and then I put it down. And I probably need to give it another go and just kind of dip into it a little bit more. But while I was enjoying it, I got about 25, 30 hours in. And then I was kind of getting a little bored with the combat. Now, not all RPGs are like that, but some of them are. Yeah, Earthbound's another one, and that's a tough game, dude. I've never gone through that one. The experience you learn, the best places are to grind out, what it's worth buying, saving time, effort. Yeah, absolutely, zombie. But I mean, that's part of that game type, right? When you're looking at RPGs, you kind of expect that, right? You're not expecting any more platformers and things like that. And I know a lot of people will say the same thing about the Souls series of games, that no, you don't have to grind those. I'm like, yeah, if you've already mastered the patterns and stuff like that of the monster and you've already been through the game several times, no, the game is not grindy at all. If you're new to the series or you're new to that game type and you're coming in and you're trying to learn all these patterns and stuff like that, you're probably going to spend some time grinding up levels and getting new gear and trying different playstyles to try to figure out what works for you so you can try to push to that boss. Those are absolutely grindy games in that case. Not later as you're more experienced, but in the beginning, absolutely. Right. That's the same way with any online game you play too. But again, grinding was optional to some extent. It was up to you to determine where to level up and what items you needed. Yeah, absolutely. I was the kind of guy that if I had a party member that was going to be in my party or somebody I thought I might use in my party, I always got any weapon upgrade, anything that looked like an upgrade for everybody when I went into town. I always did that way because I never knew when I would need to use them. And if they were under geared and under leveled, that was a problem. Sorry, Mike. I feel like I'm just feeling dead air here.
No. I'm trying to think what else. I mean, because I feel like it was a great topic because I feel like not that you ever not let me talk. I'm just saying out loud. I've talked a lot tonight because this is something that I've been fairly. It shows up in what I play and what I stream. I tend to push towards retro, and there's just this reason for it, and I think that a lot of people and we've talked about this in other Retro Roots episodes, why indie developers especially are making games that look like 8 and 16-bit games, that play like 8 and 16-bit games like Vampire Survivor, those kind of things, the Broforce kind of games.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason that developers are harnessing that, and a big part of it is, I think there's a yearning from the, let's call it the older gamers like us, along with a curiosity of the younger gamers, stuck together with the glue of a lot of modern gaming is broken. And for us older guys, it's a nostalgia of, man, we just want to play games. Mm-hmm. And then the younger people going, oh, what are these older games you speak of? And I think that is causing a renaissance of the retro feel. It is something that, and maybe not the young kids, because the young kids are playing Fortnite, but the older, like the now 20 somethings, are starting to find retro gaming. I'm an Antstream arcade partner, and so I'm part of a Discord in the partner program. And almost every day now, there's a new streamer, a new partner that comes in that is loving streaming and playing Antstream. I've seen more Giant Slayer challenges now than I've ever seen. And a lot of those people that are coming in are young guys and some girls too, that are getting introduced to those old games that the arcade games that I used to play. Like the fact that people are starting, there's not a night of the Giant Slayer challenges where there isn't a Pac-Man, a Dig Dug, an old Strikers 1999 that I'm not playing. And it warms my heart because people love it, and people are coming into that stream and hanging out and seeing something that they don't normally see, and I think that is causing this kind of retro renaissance. It's causing people to buy games. I mean, game prices are continuing to go up.
Right.
And now that we're seeing systems like the OG Xbox, PlayStation 2, the GameCube, I'm actually thrilled to see the GameCube is getting some recognition from the retro community as a legit system.
Anybody that wasn't a total dumbass was giving the GameCube props. I'm sorry. That's my opinion on it. The GameCube was an excellent system when it came out. Even I snoozed on it for a while because of the kitty shape, the small.
A lot of those games hold up.
But
a lot of those games hold up.
The games speak for themselves. The games are phenomenal.
Yeah. That's one that I need to find because I've got an original GameCube with the digital connector on the back. The HDMI connector for that is more expensive than buying the regular one that goes into the AV. I want to find that because that's the more pure digital output. And my GameCube actually has
there's a
Game
reason
Boy.
Why younger generations created NES hard when it was our norm. Honestly, Zombie, I think Genesis hard needs to be a thing. I've seen some just idiotically tough Genesis games too.
Yeah, but I want to go back to JDA too real quick because JDA was playing Tom and Jerry, and I had started to say earlier that you don't see those type of games in modern days either. You don't see the Tom and Jerry's. You don't like one of the very first Genesis games that I played. That was a licensed game was Tasmania, which was the Tasmanian Devil from Warner Brothers, right? That came out around the time I don't think, and JDA, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Castle of Illusion had come out yet. I think it was still a little bit away. But those games, those early Disney games, the Castlevania games, the Simpsons games from Acclaim, Bart versus the universe, the Ren and Stimpy games, right? Those cartoonish games, the Tom and Jerry game that JDA was playing, you don't see those anymore. Like there's no, if you're going to use those licenses, and I don't even know if people can get access to those licenses, they would be made into 3D open world. Like I don't want to play a Tom and Jerry open world 3D game. I want to play the game JDA played. Those are the games that made the cartoons come alive. Like they looked like the cartoons, and you just don't get that anymore. Those are another reason. Those platformers, you don't find those platformers very often in modern gaming anymore. You just don't. They're all Metroidvanias or some weird form of I think the other one is the hell do they call the ones that you're supposed to die about?
Souls-like? What are you talking about?
Roguelikes.
Gotcha.
Roguelikes. And there aren't many games that just go back to those games, or Clockwork Knight, or Mega Man. We
There's
skip
a lot
over
of Mega Man-like games out there now, actually.
Are there?
Yeah.
Because
20XX, 30XX, Hollow Knight's
okay.
kind of a Metroidvania, Mega Man style game. Shovel Knight.
Well, but they're Metroidvania Mega Mans. Are they?
Shovel Knight is a Mega Man. Well, 20XX and 30XX aren't.
They're
Shovel Knight
flat
is
out.
Not.
No, Shovel Knight's you're right. Shovel Knight is more of a that's a more of a pure 2D platformer, but with roguelike features. Like that one, when you die and your next generation of your family takes over.
Hey, Al, good morning, by the way. Or afternoon.
Al!
Might be afternoon
Oh my goodness. So oh yeah, Simpsons Hit and Run and Road Rage, great games. Great games.
No, the GameCube just on titles specifically made by Nintendo alone would hold the GameCube up. But you also had a Beautiful Joe. That first got its drop on there, and that's oh my god, such a good game. Hard as nails, but amazing game. So Resident Evil 0, I think, launched on there too. And there were a couple other games. They had a bunch of third-party games that came out there. Some of them were exclusives, some were timed exclusives.
Star Wars Rogue Leader, Star Wars Rogue Squadron. The Star Wars Rogue Rebel one that was Rebel on there. Yeah, what was it? The third one was Rebel Strike. Unbelievable.
No, the GameCube had a lot going on. It just got overlooked.
You did, and the small discs didn't.
Hell, I think it comes down to what it always comes down to with us, and it's kind of like it depends. I think for a lot of us, it's part nostalgia, part of it's the simplicity, part of it is the time investment. Like you can get a lot of progress done in a short amount of time. Part of it is not feeling so much like work when you go in to play the game. You're not facing like an 80, 90 hour experience. Regardless of skill level, it's more skill focused and commitment focused rather than time focused and time gated. You also don't have to deal with so many updates and things like that, and just the appreciation of being able to just boot something up and be able to play it, not have to worry about a console update or a patch or some other hidden fee for some other part of the game that's now required for the game and stuff like that. I think that's kind of where our consensus started coming in. I'm actually kind of glad Elle came in for us to kind of do a bit of a wrap up.
So I think I've got it. Yeah, I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover tonight.
Yeah, I think we're pretty good on what we've covered here. Soul Calibur 2 with Link as a playable character. Yeah, it was another really good version to that.
Yep.
I think I had gotten that one on the Xbox for whatever reason, and I forget who the
And Soul
character was
Calibur
in.
on the Dreamcast holds up so well.
Oh, that one was amazing.
And even the Dreamcast, there are 2 racing games on the Dreamcast that everybody knows that watches my channel knows I am so fond of, and they are in that same vein. Wacky Racers, which looks exactly like the
That's one I
freaking
always meant to get
cartoon.
around to playing. You're not that one and the Looney Tunes one.
Looney Tunes Space Race.
Yeah, those are ones that Borns had mentioned to me a couple times that I had never gotten around to playing.
And and they're both Infograms, which was now owned by Atari, and they're trying to bring that
That's
brand
right.
back. But
Yoda
that's
was
my
who I had on
old
the Xbox. Darth Vader was
yes,
PlayStation.
correct. But those are and you know what? Donald Duck going Quackers. Now that was more 3D, but man, what a great Dreamcast game. Disney just doesn't do those anymore.
Disney can't figure out whether it wants to be in video games or not, or who to partner with. Most of the games that they're trying to partner with, honestly,
Are Star Wars now.
yeah. Does Disney own Looney Tunes? I thought Looney Tunes was still owned by WB.
Looney Tunes, I think the IP is still owned by WB.
Yeah, and I don't think WB knows what the hell to do with it anymore because
They don't know what to do with any of their games.
well, they especially don't know what to do with Looney Tunes. A lot of Looney Tunes is a product of its era.
Just like they don't know they own,
So they're not sure where to go with some of that.
which is funny because they also own the Midway games, and they've taken the Midway games away from Antstream.
Yeah.
They have basically put their middle finger up to anybody who still wants to play Midway games. I hope
you're not really wrong. Disney has gone hardcore
Oh
in that
yeah,
direction.
yes.
And that's another thing that we talked about that kind of pushes us more towards like more retro gaming as well, is that it feels like things were focused on either making a fun gameplay experience or a fun story rather than trying to preach any particular message, which seems to kind of take priority in a lot of modern gaming, it seems like. When we're getting a Pepe Le Pew open world dating sim. That might be the new Leisure Suit Larry.
Again, a game you can't do now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So,
I mean, you could, but it would get so lambasted.
It would be so watered down. You couldn't. You simply couldn't do it now. I mean, it would be yeah. And again, another going back to those weren't on consoles, but that is old school. That's old school PC.
Yeah,
I definitely consider that a retro. All of those games, Leisure Suit Larry, Space Quest, Police Quest, King's Quest, and I know that they did. Roberta and Ken Williams did bring a new King's Quest to modern consoles and actually kept the spirit of King's Quest, minus the fact that they split it into episodes. But I was okay with that.
I can kind of see this point, Al, because there's a lot more dynamically going on rather than just pattern recognition in a modern game.
Yeah, but a lot of it is repetition.
Everything's repetition.
Yeah, but
I mean, you learn how to write through repetition. You learn mathematics through repetition. Everything's repetition.
No, but math's not fun. But repetition.
Not for you. There's plenty of people that fucking love math.
Those people are weird.
I'm not saying they're not weird, but they're like physicists and mathematicians and statisticians and.
My point is that
math fun.
in an open world, repetition gets boring quick, and while it's a difference between getting paid to be a mathematician and paying someone for a game, the money's going in the wrong direction. So you need to be entertained. I am not, and that's the other reason that I don't play Souls games. I am not entertained by them. I am frustrated by them. So I would rather go back and play Burger Time, because at least with Burger Time, I've got a fighting chance. I'm entertained by Burger Time. I'm not entertained by Dark Souls 3. I'm not entertained by Elden Ring.
I beat
I'm not
Demon Souls. That's the only one of the Souls games I've ever beaten. And see, Elle loves Souls games, and there's plenty of people that love those.
And nothing wrong with that
challenge. They like learning the pattern recognition. They like learning the ticks. And one of the things I will give to the Souls games, and I worked up a video on this. One of the things that I think makes those games appealing, other than just the pattern recognition and the difficulty, is the fact that regardless of the starting class that you pick, by the end of that game, you can make that character do all sorts of loop-de-loops with whatever the hell you want within the confines of the game, right? I mean, there's certain restrictions on the game itself. There has to be, right? But there's a lot of like weird, freaky, crazy stuff you can do in those games that you can make work. Silver Fox is a prime example of that. He'll go through Elden Ring like 8 million times. I'm going to be Donatello today. I'm going to be Leonardo, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, right? And just trying out different builds and making them work. Yeah, whatever you want, whatever you need, a little flame. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the overarching appeal of those, I feel like, more so than the punishing difficulty. But that is part of it. A lot of people feel like modern games had gotten too easy, and around the time that those games came back, it was hearkening more to the games of old, where games were actually difficult, right? They were designed to be difficult for different reasons back then than they are now, but they had gone away from like really truly difficult games to give you more of an accessible experience, kind of like what you were talking about, Mike. You kind of dilute the experience, you dilute the core experience, or you change the core experience to cater it to where more people can feel comfortable experiencing that game, right? It's kind of having things like modern controls on fighting games. It's frustrating for somebody who puts the time in to learn the classic controls, but it also, on the other hand, allows more people to compete at a higher level that normally would just get super frustrated and just walk away and not even bother to attempt to have that experience, right? And maybe they move to the different control scheme and get more depth in it. Maybe they don't, And he's saying modern retro games now take the difficulty up a notch higher. Yeah. Yeah, modern fighting games do have a high skill ceiling with execution and combos, etc. And modern makes that more accessible, but there's a lower ceiling to that particular type of approach than like the more classic approach, right? So you can get to like here with modern, which is still very competitive, but you could probably hit here with classic, right? So it depends if you feel the need to close that gap or not.
Yes.
And that's that way with a lot of things. Like the Souls games have been notorious for going, well, we're not giving you an easy mode on this. We're not giving you difficulty settings. We're not giving you a pause. And sometimes I'm okay with that, and sometimes I'm not. If I'm not okay with that, I either won't buy the game or I won't play it during times where I can't dedicate the amount of time to play it.
And that dedication is, unfortunately, blends into time.
Yeah,
blends into accessibility.
It all takes time. And Souls games are notorious. Like, if you're not playing them on a semi-regular basis, whatever skill you got that's the main thing that's driving you forward in those games will erode. And you're going to have to relearn it to start making progress from where you're at or restart. It's just how it is.
Right.
They are, but it also changes timing and inputs and certain things like that. I think there's more to it than just hitting the keys. But yeah, that's a big part of it. The real problem with modern games is your friend's not within swinging distance.
Yeah. As I like to call it, within arm's length.
I feel like that might be a good place to end this conversation.
I think so. No, this was and it's also 12:30. But this was a good conversation, because if you see what's going on with...
See, even Elle agrees. It does make a big difference being next to somebody.
Oh, sure does. Especially
That way, if
when you're
they're getting locked in a combo, you can make them drop it just by slapping the
right,
controller
slapping the
out of their
controller.
hand. See, you
Hey,
dropped your
I
combo. I hate that for you.
back I kid you not. I used to know somebody, and mistakenly were friends with them, who was so competitive, and I mean so competitive. If you beat him at a game, he had a tantrum to the extent that I was staying the night at his house. We were playing Dr. Mario, and I beat him so badly at Dr. Mario in his own house, he threw me out.
I don't think I've gotten pissed, but I don't think I've ever thrown anybody out.
I, I was like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "You got to get
Al,
it.
I'm thrilled you
Get
could
out."
show up, man. I appreciate the hell out of it.
No.
Talking shit in person is the way more mental. See, I get in Discord with my buddy and we talk shit to each other all the time. We're actually kind of civil about it. Like I honestly expected to get like legit annoyed with him today, because I've been taking him to school in Street Fighter, which is rare because normally I'm not better than him at Street Fighter, and then we moved to Killer Instinct, which I knew I'd dominate him on that, and we went to Tekken. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get schooled, and it was much more even today. Honestly, a little bit in my favor. But he's so much better at Tekken than I am that I expected him just to like cream me bad, and me just have to sit there and eat it because I had it coming. I had done really well in the other games. It was my turn to take, foot to ass. It was my turn. Sounds like losing a Dr. Mario
that
is
was
a tough
perfect.
pill to swallow.
That was perfect. That's a guy, by the way, back whose ass I almost beat before I left his house. I almost there was very close to me taking a swing at him. We didn't talk for months after that.
So, Mike, what you got going on your channel this week?
All right. Tomorrow night is Tuesday Night Live with Peter and I. We're gonna play some more Atlas Fallen, a game we are enjoying. In our non-patented, because other people have done it before, dual player, dual screen thing where him and I are playing at the same time. You can see both of our streams. We are going to talk about since we are on Rumble, we are going to talk about the Dr. Disrespect thing. It does affect the platform that we're on. So we are going to talk about that. But then we're going to play Atlas Fallen, which we typically do. And it is an open Xbox party. So if people want to come in and talk with us about stuff going on in the game industry, there hasn't been much gaming news. The big gaming news was in the last 2 weeks. So, by the way, this microphone is an Xbox, according to Microsoft. But anyway, that's that. Peter will be back on Wednesday, and I thought he'd be playing Stalker 2, but he hates that game. Thursday night is Thursday night at the arcade, which is my weekly and-stream arcade stream. That's always a lot of fun. And then Friday night will be Friday night with Peter and Mike. We will be playing more Call of Duty Black Ops 6. And as we always do, that is completely open. If anybody wants to come play with us, you are more than welcome. If we get up to 6, we play against the randos out there. If we get up to 12, we just do private match and have a good time, friendly, talking shit to each other all night and enjoying each other's company. And then I'll be back on Sunday to I think I can finish Astrobot on Sunday. I may not finish all the Lost Galaxy stuff.
I was about to say, you're not far from like finishing the game itself now.
I think I can finish the main game.
It's a totally different beast.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that on stream, and I'm probably going to try that one. I'm probably going to try to beat that one challenge stage that I spent an hour on off stream, just so people don't have to see that again. But so that's my week, and then Monday Night Retro is next Monday night. That's everything going on.
The only thing I have coming out is I have a genre maker video. This one's going to be on Streets of Rage 2. Matter of fact,
very nice
on Wednesday.
You have to talk about the soundtrack.
I did briefly mention the soundtrack, but there was a lot of other stuff going on there. I've got 2 other videos that I've built up for like the next 2 weeks past this week, so I'm a little bit ahead on that. Um, but since I'm only doing the 1 video a week, I still don't have any plans on streaming. I'm kind of enjoying doing things the way they're going and doing this every other week right now. And given the fact that I'm primarily streaming when I do stream on Rumble, and Dr. Disrespect's about to come in, I don't know that anything I do would really have any kind of place anyway, so that doesn't really help my drive, quite frankly. No offense to him. I mean, he's got his crowd. He's having a good time with his crowd, and mad props to him and his crowd. You know, so it just is what it is. So for those of you new that don't know, there was a big announcement that Dr. Disrespect, I think, is moving from. I think he was on YouTube last time. I didn't see him anywhere.
Yes, he was on YouTube.
And he's moving over to Rumble at this point. So he's leaving YouTube to go to Rumble, which I think pretty much means his YouTube contract probably expired. And I don't know whether or not they offered to renew it or not, or if it was a mutual, just I'm going to go do my thing over here.
He was demonetized on YouTube a while ago.
Okay. Yeah. Probably when the last allegations or whatever it was came out.
Yeah.
That's probably when they did it. So he's been looking to move somewhere else. So Rumble picked him up. So
correct.
That's where he's going to be in the future. If any of you guys are fans, I don't know that anybody in Micron's fans. Most of the games he plays aren't games that I lean towards anyway. So it's kind of a for me personally, but that's nothing against him. That's just my taste in games versus his.
Yeah, a couple of games he plays, we play, Call of Duty and stuff like that, but that's not primarily what Next Level Gaming is either.
Right.
So yeah, we're kind of with you.
Yeah.
So, but we're, Peter and I have definite thoughts about this. We are going to discuss this tomorrow. I definitely have thoughts that I'm going to hold off on until we talk tomorrow, because I want to talk with Peter about it.
Again, I mean, he's doing what's good for him and his family. I'm sure Rumble's probably going to get a lot more visibility because he's here.
I'm apprehensive, and I'll leave it at that. I'm very apprehensive.
I think I think even the people that are eager for it are probably a little apprehensive because they don't know what it's going to do to their particular channel, right? I mean, he's a big name. He's a big draw. He's going to bring a lot of attention. He's going to pull a lot more people watching his stream that might normally be watching somebody else's stream. So I think everybody's a little nervous about it. I mean, that's kind of natural, right? I mean, he's a big talent, right? I mean, there's things for anybody that's trying to carve out their own niche to be worried about when somebody of that caliber comes to your platform. That's just natural. That's not hateful. That's just normal.
Right. So yeah. So we'll spend a little time on that tomorrow, and then we'll play Atlas Fallen.
So that's pretty much what we got going on this week. We appreciate you guys coming in, hanging out with us, spending some time with us tonight. Hopefully we will see you guys again. If you're lurking on Rumble, go ahead and hit that like button. If you're not, follow the channel. I do primarily like VOD style uploads of video game history, and then I have this podcast. Again, if streaming ever comes back, it'll probably be a separate channel. That way I can keep that separated from this particular content because I like this content looking the way it looks now. So that would be how that works. I don't have any plans for that. That's just how that would work. So, but I think for now, we're going to call it a night. Mike's going to go to bed. I'm going to spend some time with my cat, my wife, and get myself something to drink because I've been talking for 2 hours and I ran out of something to drink like an hour ago, so I'm thirsty.
Yep.
I have no idea, El. YouTube's funky that way, dude. There's times where I don't get notifications. I just happen to bump into people who happen to be streaming. I'm going to go on the platform and I see the live notification and I click on it. That's how I don't count on YouTube to give me notifications at all, ever. It's really bad at it. But thank you so much for hanging out, guys. Happy gaming till we see you guys again.
Have a good one.
Good night.
Play on, gamers.